The microphone squealed as Pastor Obinna tapped it twice. Zainab Mensah sat in the third pew of Glorious Redeemer Gospel Church in Accra, Ghana, her white lace wrapper perfectly pressed, her cream-colored blouse spotless. Around her, 500 congregation members settled into wooden benches. It was Sunday, the day she'd looked forward to all week, the day she served as the church's head of women's ministry. She didn't see Chioma coming. Chioma Okonkwo, her sister-in-law, burst through the center aisle like a furious hurricane. Her wrapper flew behind her. Her voice shattered the morning stillness before she reached the front. Liar. Deceiver. Pretender. Heads snapped. Babies cried. Zainab's chest collapsed as if struck. Chioma reached the pulpit steps, trembling with rage. Pastor Obinna stepped back, bewildered. This woman, Chioma pointed directly at Zainab, this righteous, holy woman who judges us all, she's a criminal. She was in prison. Prison, I say. Before she married my brother Emeka. The church erupted. Whispers became shouts. Zainab's vision blurred. Her hands shook so violently she couldn't grip the armrest. Everything she'd built, 8 years of marriage, a spotless reputation, the trust of hundreds, collapsed in one sentence. My sister sent me evidence, Chioma screamed, waving her phone. Court records from Lagos. Zainab was convicted of theft. She served 2 years. My family's name is ruined. Zainab's mouth opened, but no sound came. Around her, women she'd mentored, prayed with, celebrated with, their faces turned cold. Their eyes hardened. She could see the calculations happening in their minds. How could we trust her? What else has she lied about? Who is this woman, really? Emeka wasn't there. Sunday service was a sacred time, her one day when she felt truly seen, truly worthy. And now? She never told anyone. Chioma continued, her voice shrill and triumphant. Not my brother. Not his family. She's been living a lie, eating our food, raising our children, all while hiding her criminal past. Children. The word pierced Zainab deeper than any other. She and Emeka had 2, Tund, 8, and little Oma, 5. Both had been born after her release, after her redemption, after she'd rebuilt herself from ashes. Get up. Chioma commanded. Stand and confess. Let everyone see who you really are. Zainab stood without deciding to. Her legs moved on their own. The church seemed to tilt and spin. Hundreds of eyes bored into her skin like flames. Her voice cracked like breaking glass. But she couldn't finish. Because at that moment, the church door burst open again, and Zainab's world shattered completely. It was Emeka. His face was already contorted with shock and fury. Behind him was his mother, Ne, and his younger brother Choku. All three looked as if they'd been struck by lightning. Emeka's eyes found hers, and in them she saw something die. What would you do if your past was exposed in front of everyone you love? Hit like if you've ever been judged unfairly, and comment where you're watching from. What do you think happens next? The Mensah house fell silent as a tomb. Zainab sat at the kitchen table, her cream blouse now wrinkled, her wrapper still perfectly wrapped but somehow seeming like a costume now. Outside, the Accra afternoon heat pressed against the windows. Inside, cold could freeze blood. Emeka paced the living room beyond the doorway, refusing to look at her. They sat on the leather sofa with her arms crossed so tightly she looked as if she might strangle herself. Tund and Oma had been sent to stay with Zainab's sister, Amora, who lived nearby. That hurt almost more than Emeka's silence. How long? Nde's voice came sharp as a blade. 8 years, Zainab whispered. 8 years. Emeka repeated it like a curse. He finally looked at her, and his eyes held such betrayal that Zainab's heart physically ached. 8 years you've been my wife. 8 years I've introduced you to my colleagues, my family, my church. 8 years you've attended the annual Law Society Gala. And you never thought to mention that you were a thief. I was not, Zainab started, but her voice was too small. Don't, they said coldly. Don't insult our intelligence. Chioma has the court documents. We've seen them. Zainab had known this day might come. She'd lived in its shadow like a dark bird hovering overhead. But knowing and living through it were different universes. The children, she said. Turned and Oma, they don't need to suffer. And whose fault is that? Emika's voice cracked with a pain so raw it made her physically recoil. You made this choice, Zainab. Every single day for 8 years, you chose to lie. To me. To my family. To our children. I was protecting. Protecting what? Your reputation. Your comfortable life. Emika's laugh was bitter, broken. What about the truth, Zainab? What about honesty? What about the fact that I married a woman I don't even know? They stood abruptly. I want her out of this house by tomorrow morning. We'll arrange separate accommodations. You'll have supervised access to the children until we see a family counselor. And frankly, Zainab, I'm not sure even that's warranted. The words landed like physical blows. Out of the house. Her home for 8 years. Away from her babies. Nde, please, Zainab's voice broke into pieces. You had 8 years to tell him the truth, Emika's mother said coldly. You chose this. She walked out, her footsteps echoing on the tile floor. Emika stood motionless, staring at the wall beyond his wife as if she'd become invisible. The court case, he said quietly. What was it really about? Zainab took a shaky breath. This was the moment. The truth, finally. I was working at a jewelry store in Lagos, she said slowly. I was 19. A woman I thought was my friend, she was part of a theft ring. She told me to help her move some pieces. I didn't know they were stolen. I was young, naive, desperate for belonging. When we were caught, she testified against me to reduce her own sentence. I was convicted. I served 2 years. Emika's jaw clenched. And you never thought I should know this. I was ashamed, Zainab whispered. And then time passed. The longer I didn't tell you, the harder it became. And then, her voice broke. Then I was too afraid to lose you. But you have, he said, his voice dead and hollow. The woman I married doesn't exist. He turned and walked up the stairs, leaving her alone in the kitchen as the Accra painted the walls gold, indifferent to her destruction. Zainab sat in the gathering darkness, wondering if she'd ever be forgiven, or if this was simply the price for 8 years of beautiful lies. Outside, the neighborhood gossip network was already activating. By morning, everyone from the church to the market would know, Zainab Mensah, the virtuous woman, was a jailbird wearing a stolen crown. But what they wouldn't know yet was far more dangerous. Because at that same moment, across the city in a glass office building, Chioma Okonkwo was meeting with someone she shouldn't have. And their conversation was about to make everything much, much worse. The glass office overlooked the Accra skyline, and through it, Chioma could see the Atlantic Ocean glinting like broken jewelry. She sat across from Kofi Mensah, Emika's cousin, a business rival who'd been waiting for years to destroy Emika's reputation. Kofi smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. You did well, he said, sliding an envelope across the mahogany desk. It was thick with Ghana cedis. Chioma didn't touch it immediately. Around her, the office spoke of wealth, money her school teacher salary could never touch. She worked at a girls' academy in Tima. She lived in a modest 3-bedroom house. But Kofi was something else entirely. Dangerous. Connected. Is this everything we discussed? She asked carefully. Half now, Kofi said. Half when Emika dissolves the business partnership he and I started. Once his family is in shambles, he won't have the emotional resources to fight me in court. The Mensah group is worth millions. I want my controlling share, and I want Emeka too humiliated to contest it. Chioma finally took the envelope. It was heavier than it should have been. Money, she'd learned, was always heavier than people expected. What about Zainab? She asked. Kofi's expression darkened. What about her? She's family. She didn't actually do anything to you. She married Emeka, Kofi said flatly. That was her crime. Anyone connected to him is an obstacle. Chioma felt something shift uncomfortably in her chest, but she pushed it down. She'd been so angry when her sister Adana sent her the court documents. Adana, who worked for a law firm in Lagos, had stumbled across the old case file while doing research. She'd been horrified. Their brother was married to a thief. The family's honor was at stake. Or so Chioma had believed. But now, looking at Kofi's cold, calculating face, she wondered if Adana had really stumbled across anything. Or if this had been orchestrated. If she, Chioma, had been played like a puppet. I need to go, she said, standing. We are not finished, Kofi said. Yes, we are. Chioma clutched the envelope. I've done what we agreed. Zainab's reputation is destroyed. Emeka is devastated. That's it. That's just the beginning, Kofi said softly. The next phase. There is no next phase, Chioma interrupted. Not with me. She turned to leave, but Kofi's next word stopped her cold. Your daughter's school fees, he said. Who do you think was paying the difference? When your salary wasn't quite enough. When the headmaster was going to expel Zay for unpaid tuition. Chioma's blood froze. She turned back slowly. My sister, Kofi continued, Adana, she's been getting deposits into her account for 3 years. From an anonymous source. Who do you think that was? No, Chioma breathed. Oh yes, Kofi smiled. Your sister's mortgage. Your daughter's education. All paid by me. You've been working for me, Chioma, for 3 years. You just didn't know it yet. The room began to spin. Chioma had thought she was making a quick transaction, sell information for cash. But now she realized she'd sold something far more valuable. Her soul. What do you want? She whispered. The next phase, Kofi said, is making sure Emeka doesn't reconcile with his wife. She has to leave him. Permanently. If they reunite, he'll have emotional support to fight me. So here's what you're going to do. But Chioma wasn't listening anymore. She was thinking about Zainab's face in the church. She was thinking about Little Ton and Omar. She was thinking about how she'd destroyed a family for money she'd already been receiving. And most terrifyingly, she was thinking about what Kofi would do if she tried to back out now. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who loves emotional drama. What do you think Chioma will do next? Comment below. Zainab's new apartment was in Jamestown, a neighborhood that whispered with history and hardship. The landlord had asked few questions when she arrived with one suitcase and the clothes on her back. In Accra's rental market, mysterious women running from lives were common enough not to spark curiosity. The apartment was small, 1 bedroom, a bathroom no bigger than a closet, a kitchen that held 3 people uncomfortably. The walls had water stains. The air conditioning didn't work. Through the thin walls, she could hear neighbors arguing, crying, living their lives in proximity to hers. She'd stayed here once before, 15 years ago, right after her release from prison. She'd forgotten this feeling of being pressed down by gravity, of the world closing in. On the second night, she was boiling water for tea when the knock came. She opened the door to find Chioma, her sister-in-law, standing in the hallway. Chioma looked terrible, makeup smudged, eyes red, wrapper hastily tied. Zainab's first instinct was to slam the door. Please, Chioma said quickly. Just 5 minutes. I'm not here to hurt you. Aren't you? Zainab's voice was ice. No, Chioma said. And to Zainab's surprise, she started crying. I've destroyed everything. And I need to fix it. Zainab studied her sister-in-law for a long moment. Then, slowly, she stepped aside. In the small kitchen, Chioma sat at a plastic table and told her everything. Kofi's manipulation. The money her sister had been receiving. The threats, implied and explicit, about what would happen if she didn't continue playing along. The plan to keep Zainab and Emeka permanently separated. Why are you telling me this? Zainab asked quietly, her tea growing cold in her hands. Because I went to my sister, Chioma said. Adana. I told her what Kofi had done, how he'd used us both. And she told me something. Chioma looked directly at Zainab. The court case against you, it wasn't legitimate. The woman who testified against you, the one who claimed you stole with her. She's recanted. Adana found her in Lagos, and she confessed that Kofi paid her to lie. He wanted you discredited, Zainab. He wanted you weak before he made his move against Emeka. The world tilted. What? Zainab's voice was barely a whisper. You were innocent, Chioma said, tears streaming down her face. You were innocent the whole time. And I helped destroy you for nothing. Zainab couldn't breathe. 15 years. 15 years she'd carried the weight of those accusations. 15 years she'd believed she deserved her shame. The past 2 years, she'd been convinced her conviction was rightful, and only her character had transformed. But if it had all been a lie? Adana is preparing documentation, Chioma continued. She's going to have your conviction formally overturned. But first, we need to stop Kofi. And we need to tell Emeka the truth. He won't believe us, Zainab said. Why would he? Look what just happened. Because my sister can provide evidence, Chioma said. And because? Chioma took a shaky breath. Because I'm going to confess. To Emeka. To the church. To everyone. What I did. Who paid me? All of it. Zainab felt something crack open inside her chest. Why would you do that? Chioma looked at this woman she tried to destroy, this woman who'd been tried and found guilty by the world. And in Zainab's eyes, she saw not anger, but a strange, fragile compassion. Because, Chioma said quietly, someone needs to show that there's grace left in this world. You had the chance to humiliate me like I humiliated you. You could have thrown me out. But instead, you let me in. That's the kind of woman Emeka needs. That's the kind of woman his children deserve. Zainab reached across the table and took Chioma's hand. Two women, broken in different ways, holding on to each other in the dark. What happens now? Chioma whispered. But before Zainab could answer, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. The blood drained from Zainab's face as she read it. What is it? Chioma asked. Zainab turned the phone toward her. The message was from Kofi. I know about your little meeting with Chioma. Tell her goodbye. Her daughter Zoe just left school. I know exactly where she is. Do exactly as I say, or the girl becomes collateral damage. You have 1 hour. Zainab's hands shook so violently she could barely dial. Emeka, she said the moment he answered. Don't ask questions. Just listen. Your cousin Kofi has Chioma's daughter. He's using her as leverage. We need to call the police. Now. There was a bit of silence. Then Emeka's voice came through, sharp and focused. Where are you? Jamestown. Apartment 42C, Aziz Plaza. Don't move. I'm coming. The line went dead. Chioma was already standing, her face drained of color. Zoe. Oh God, my daughter. What if he? He won't, Zainab said, though she didn't believe it. He needs her as leverage. That means she's valuable alive. But even as she said it, her phone buzzed again. This time it was a video. Zainab's stomach dropped as she watched. Zoe, Chioma's 12-year-old daughter, sitting in what looked like an abandoned warehouse. She was alone, terrified, bound to a chair. Chioma made a sound like an animal in pain. Mommy. Zoe's voice came through the phone, tiny and broken. Mommy, I'm scared. We are coming, baby. Chioma screamed. We are coming. But the video cut to black, replaced by a text. Accra Port. Building 7. Come alone, Zainab. Bring Emeka and I kill the girl. Come with police and I kill the girl. Bring the documentation about your conviction from Adana and I'll let them both leave. You have 45 minutes. Zainab's mind raced. She called Emeka back immediately. He wants me to come to the port. Alone. He wants the documentation. Absolutely not, Emeka said. We are calling the police. If we do, he'll kill her. Zainab, he's manipulating you. He's manipulating everyone. Zainab's voice broke. But that little girl is real, Emeka. And she's terrified. We have to think. At that moment, there was a knock on the apartment door. Chioma and Zainab froze. Through the peephole, Zainab saw a woman she didn't recognize. She was small, with fierce eyes and dressed in the uniform of a security officer. Slowly, Zainab opened the door. Zainab Mensah, the woman said. I'm Officer Yolanda Afima. I've been investigating Kofi Mensah for human trafficking for 2 years. We have your apartment building under surveillance. We know about the kidnapping. We have a tactical team mobilizing. Zainab's legs nearly gave out. You know. The moment that video was uploaded, it pinged our servers. Kofi's technical security is good, but he's not as smart as he thinks. We are already moving in. Officer Afima's expression was grim. But I need you to trust me. When we make the move, I need you to come with us. Can you do that? Zainab looked at Chioma. Her sister-in-law was trembling, but she nodded. Yes, Zainab said. Yes, we'll come. The warehouse was a chaos of police lights and tactical teams. Zoe was found in the office, unharmed but traumatized. Kofi was arrested while trying to flee through a back exit, a duffel bag filled with cash and fake passports in his hands. As the handcuffs clicked around his wrist, he looked directly at Zainab. This isn't over, he hissed. My lawyers will destroy you all. But Zainab wasn't afraid anymore. Officer Afima had explained that Kofi had been under investigation for years. This kidnapping was just the final piece they needed to prosecute him for multiple serious crimes. There were other victims. A trail of devastation in his wake. He would spend decades in prison. Later that night, Zainab stood outside the police station. Emeka was there, waiting for her. They didn't embrace. Not yet. But he reached for her hand. Tell me everything, he said. And this time, I'm listening to all of it. So Zainab did. She told him about being 19 and naive and desperate for belonging. She told him about the woman who'd lied. She told him about Kofi's manipulation. She told him about serving her time, about thinking that conviction had been rightful, about believing she'd earned her redemption through penance. Emeka listened without interrupting. When she finished, he pulled her close. I'm sorry, he said. I'm sorry I didn't ask questions. I'm sorry I believed Chioma without hearing your side. I should have told you, Zainab said into his shoulder. I should have trusted you with my truth. All of it. We'll work through this, Emeka said. With a therapist. With our family. But we'll work through it. Behind them, Chioma stood with Zoe in her arms, the child finally asleep after hours of trauma counseling. When she saw Zainab and Emeka together, she approached slowly. I don't expect forgiveness, Chioma said. What I did? You fixed it, Zainab interrupted. That's what matters now. You saw what was wrong and you fixed it. Chioma's face crumpled with emotion. Auntie Zainab, Zoe said sleepily, you're very brave. Zainab knelt down and kissed the child's forehead. You're the brave one, little one. You survived. As the four of them stood there in the early morning light, Zainab realized something profound: the past didn't have the power she'd given it. What had power was what you did when you finally found the courage to face it. But the night wasn't over yet. Because somewhere in a holding cell, Kofi Mensah was smiling to himself. He was making a phone call. And on the other end of that call, someone was listening very carefully. Someone who would make sure that Zainab's redemption was incomplete. 3 weeks later, Zainab stood at the altar of Glorious Redeemer Gospel Church wearing a white dress that shimmered like hope. Around her, the entire congregation had gathered, not for a wedding, but for something far more significant. An apology. The church was exactly as it had been the day Chioma destroyed her. The same wooden pews. The same stained glass windows filtering the Accra sun into colored geometry. But the air felt different now. Cleaner, somehow. Zainab had written a statement. She'd asked to read it from the pulpit. 3 weeks ago, she began, her voice steady but thick with emotion. I stood here in shame. I believed that shame was my permanent address. I believed that my past was all I would ever be. But I was wrong. She looked out at the sea of faces. Some she'd known for years. Others she was meeting for the first time, now that the full truth was public knowledge. I was wrongly convicted when I was 19 years old, she continued. I served my sentence. But I never let go of the guilt. And because I carried that guilt, I built my life on a foundation of deception. I was so afraid that if people knew who I'd been, they wouldn't accept who I'd become. So I hid. And in hiding, I hid from myself. In the front row, Emeka sat with Ton and Oma on either side of him. Ton was old enough to understand what was happening. Oma just knew that her mother was standing up where the pastors usually stood, and that was exciting. My past is not my shame, Zainab said. My shame was in denying it. My shame was in the lies I told. But my redemption, her voice cut slightly, my redemption came when I finally chose truth over fear. When I chose to be known completely, even if it meant losing everything. Chioma sat several rows back, tears streaming down her face. Beside her, Adana held her sister's hand. Over the past weeks, Adana had worked with lawyers to formally overturn Zainab's conviction. The woman who'd lied against her had been tracked down in a small village outside Lagos. She tearfully confessed to being paid by Kofi Mensah to perjure herself. It was all documented now. Official. Irrevocable. I want to thank Chioma Okonkwo, Zainab said, gesturing to her former enemy. She made a terrible choice to expose me. But she made a greater choice to correct that mistake. She chose justice over pride. She chose humanity when she could have chosen revenge. That taught me something important, that people can change. That we are never permanently locked into who we've been. Chioma put her face in her hands, overwhelmed. Most importantly, Zainab continued, I want to ask this community for forgiveness. Not for my past, which I've paid for. Not for being a young, foolish woman who got caught up with the wrong people. But for lying to you. For pretending to be perfect when I should have been honest. For representing myself as someone who had it all figured out, when what I should have done was model what real growth looks like, messy, difficult, requiring humility. Pastor Obinna stood and approached her. In his hands, he held a rose. White, pure, perfect. This church, he said, his voice resonant in the silence, is a place for sinners, not saints. We've forgotten that sometimes. We've created an impossible standard. But Christ didn't come for the righteous. He came for people like you, Zainab. For people willing to tell the truth, willing to grow, willing to say, I was wrong and I'm going to do better. He placed the rose in her hands. I wanted to come up here and announce that your conviction is officially overturned, Pastor Obina said. The state has issued a formal apology. More than that, they are establishing a commission to review other cases from that same period, because we now know that Kofi Mensah corrupted the judicial system itself. Your nightmare helped expose a predator who was harming dozens of people. Zainab felt her knees buckle. You didn't just survive your past, the pastor continued. You transformed it. Into justice. Into protection for others. Later, after the service ended and people lined up to embrace her, to whisper apologies for judging her so harshly, to ask for her forgiveness, Zainab found herself standing outside under the Accra sun with Emeka. I want to renew our vows, she said suddenly. Emeka looked at her, surprised. What? When we got married, Zainab continued, I was lying to you. I spoke vows I didn't have the right to speak. I want to do it again. With everything on the table. With the whole truth standing beside me. I want to marry you again, the real me, not the woman I pretended to be. Emeka pulled her close. That sounds perfect. There's something else, Zainab said quietly. Kofi, he made a deal with his lawyers. In exchange for information about his trafficking network, he's going to testify against several high-ranking officials who were part of his schemes. Officer Afuma told me that his corporation is going to dismantle what amounts to an organized crime operation that's been operating in West Africa for over a decade. So what does that mean for you? It means, Zainab said, that sometimes our greatest pain can become our greatest purpose. It means that I'm not just going to rebuild my life. I'm going to help rebuild the lives of his other victims. There's an NGO that Officer Afuma is involved with. They are looking for someone to run their community education program. Someone who understands betrayal and recovery from the inside. Emeka smiled. It was the first real smile she'd seen from him since the church explosion. That's exactly what they need. That night, in their home, the one Zainab had moved back into, carefully, tentatively, but with Emeka meeting her halfway, she sat with Ton and Oma. Mommy, Oma asked, are you still the pastor now? Zainab laughed, surprised. The church had asked her to step down from her official role in the women's ministry, which she'd accepted without argument. She needed time to heal, and the community needed space to heal from having their judgment challenged so thoroughly. No, baby, she said, pulling her daughter close. But I'm still your mommy. And I'm going to be the best mommy I can be. Even though you were in jail? Ton asked, with the directness of 8 years old. Even though I was in jail, Zainab confirmed. People make mistakes. People suffer. People change. And that's the real miracle, not that I went to jail, but that I came out of it. That I got a second chance. That your father loved me even when I was scared to tell him the truth. That your Auntie Chioma was brave enough to admit when she was wrong. That's what matters. As she topped them in that night, Zainab looked at herself in the mirror of the bathroom. The woman looking back at her was familiar now, not the perfect facade, not the terrified fraud, but someone in between. Someone still becoming. Someone who'd learned that redemption wasn't a destination you reached once and stayed at forever. It was a daily choice. A recommitment to truth. 2 months later, she and Emeka renewed their vows in a small private ceremony with just family. And when the pastor asked her to speak her vows this time, Zainab didn't hide any part of herself. I promise to love you with honesty, she said, her voice clear and true. Not the honesty of perfection, but the honesty of someone who's been broken and learned to value integrity above all else. I promise to face you with truth, even when truth is hard. I promise to raise our children to understand that people are complex, that mistakes don't define us, but what we do after mistakes is everything. Emeka wept. And in the congregation, Chioma wept too. Because she'd learned something equally profound, that redemption wasn't just for the person seeking it. It was for everyone brave enough to witness it, to participate in it, to believe in its possibility. Later, Officer Afuma would tell Zainab that Kofi's testification had resulted in the arrest of 17 government officials, the freeing of 43 trafficking victims, and the dismantling of an international smuggling ring that had been operating for 15 years. One woman's choice to tell the truth had changed the course of history for dozens of people. Zainab never forgot that. She also never forgot what she'd learned, that shame is only permanent if we let it be. That the past is only the ending if we decide not to write what comes next. That sometimes the people who hurt us most are simply afraid, and fear makes monsters of us all, unless we choose mercy. In that choice, mercy, everything transforms. The faithful woman had been betrayed by the family she married into, yes. But she'd also been redeemed by choosing her own story. And that, she learned, was the greatest redemption of all. Thank you so much for watching The Faithful Woman Betrayed by the Family She Married Into. Like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to know that their past doesn't define their future. Comment your thoughts on Zainab's journey below, and tell us where you're watching from. What lesson will you take from her redemption? Don't forget to check out our other stories of resilience, forgiveness, and the triumph of the human spirit. You are loved. You are seen. Your story matters. Until next time, keep your faith alive. Folded hands.